Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Playbook. This week's guest is Mo.sidky. Mo, how you doing today?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's great to have you on this week's show, and appreciate you coming down.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So, we like to kind of start off by asking our guests kind of what, intrigued them about real estate, what kind of got the wheels turning, what was making them, wanting to do real estate, pursue a career as a real estate agent. So why don't you take us a trip down memory lane and let us know, what kind of got the wheels turning in your mind, and what was it that kind of sparked your interest in real estate?
Sure, that's a great question. As far back as I can remember, maybe post-college, I just started to find real estate to be really appealing. The buying, the selling process. I felt like a lot of what real estate entails sort of just came naturally to me. And it's funny because I had a whole bunch of friends, some of which had fathers that were in real estate. And they're like, "Mo, you really need to get into real estate, man. This is your thing." Because I was a teacher, and they're like, you're a great teacher, but I think like where you would really thrive would be in real estate. And so, I did some minor dabbling here and there in 07, 08, and throughout the years, and I just gained more and more experience and started to like it more and more, and the rest is history.
Awesome. So you kind of had a teaching background, and we've had some other guests, who had various professions, in their careers prior to getting into real estate. A couple that I always see as common career paths to segue into real estate and get into production quicker, have greater success, is teaching and then hospitality. Usually I think hospitality, you kind of teach that customer service, and teaching, you kind of stay regimented, disciplined, know how to work a schedule. A lot of it's on you, things like that. So why don't you tell us, so we hear it straight from the horse's mouth, what are some of the things that you learned from your teaching background that helped you kind of transition into real estate to get you into production quicker and to have success quicker than most agents?
That's a great question. Actually, in grad school, I specialized in individuals with emotional and behavioral disabilities. And so one thing that they really encouraged us to do was have empathy. And really understanding where people are coming from, sympathizing with them, empathizing with them. And I think that's really helped me in terms of trying to understand the frustrations a lot of buyers experience, and to be able to recognize those frustrations and then really ease the process. Because so many first-time home buyers have an idea that buying a home is extremely challenging. There's a lot of ups and downs those first 30 days until you get to close. And I think a good real estate agent really simplifies the process and takes on a lot of that weight for those first-time home buyers and then buyers that buy again and again. So to answer your question, I think the empathy piece and knowing how to deal with different people, different personalities. In my studies, I also learned that there's different learners out there. Like as a teacher, you can be in a classroom and have 10 or 15 different students, and each one of those students learns differently. And so it really requires a great deal of creativity to be able to connect with each individual buyer. And I think I've been able to bring that natural instinct and my previous education into real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could do a whole episode on a psych background. I know a lot of people who've gone into sales and even achieved at high levels, when they get into more management roles, some have gone back to school for the psychology aspect, because that is one of the main components, and kind of learning that it's not really like the scripting and the sales, it's more of learning the human behavior, how to react in certain situations, read people, and then like you did, everybody has a different learning behavior. So it probably allows you not only to have obviously empathy for what everybody's going through, but also to kind of have a different approach to every single one of your buyers and sellers. So does that kind of, what you do is kind of like you might tailor a certain learning style to a teacher. When you have a different buyer, it might be, a different approach or a different plan.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it's really just listening in the beginning and trying to understand what your buyers or sellers are looking for. And then you tailor your approach to what you think would work for them. And then it's sort of a trial and error. You see, what they like, what they don't like, how to communicate, how to get a positive response from them, and you sort of just tailor to ultimately satisfy or keep your buyers and sellers happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the main things too, because as you suggested before, it is a very, emotional time for the buyer. There's a lot of, especially the first time home buyer and the 30 days, as you alluded to, a lot of things go wrong, a lot of things that they're not prepared for. And I think with your level of education and understanding, I think a lot of agents become a little bit unregulated. I'm going to explain that as if like sometimes a buyer, they're stressed out, they might have an emotional reaction, which an agent might take personal, like it's a job at them, they're coming at you, but really you kind of have understanding, hey, they're going through this, let me kind of slow it down, you kind of stay regulated in your emotions to kind of be that voice of reason, almost that consultant, to kind of help them understand the process, become regulated themselves, and help them move forward.
No, absolutely, and I think it requires discipline and a great deal of professionalism, and it's sort of multiple factors, all encompassing, that where you really need to understand how do you create those boundaries, because sometimes buyers and sellers can try to sort of exceed those boundaries, but you maintain those boundaries, and you maintain your professionalism no matter what. I mean, you're going to deal with a roller coaster of buyers and sellers, and I just had a message the other day from one that we got approved, but could not get her approved at the amount she really wanted to get approved for, enough to buy a single family house, and she's more in the condo range, and I got a series of really heated messages where she started making claims that were scamming her, and so on and so forth. And clearly that wasn't the case. It was a numbers game.
Yeah.
And you just got to maintain your cool and always maintain your professionalism. Try to recognize their frustrations and then guide them in the right direction. And what I mean by guiding her in this particular situation was trying to clarify the process, helping her understand why she's approved for the amount she's approved for, and then how we can get her possibly approved for the amount she needs to get into that single family house.
And I think that's why you do such a great job with your clientele, is just understanding that, because there'd be a larger demographic, I think, that would have a knee-jerk reaction to kind of get that, how dare you do this, kind of go into the whole spiel and get in that defensive mode. I'm paid commission based, the higher price point I sell, the more money I make, why would I want to sell lower price point? But you kind of have that understanding of that emotional stress that a lot of these people are going through, and then, more, I think there's, obviously you're going to know better than me, but I think there's more humans out there unregulated than regulated, so they're kind of running around something that a curveball comes their way, they don't know how to handle it and process the information. It's just with that emotion kind of kicks in gear, they just act on it. So you having that understanding,
and it really clouds your judgment, and so that's why that discipline comes to play, to control your emotions and think before you respond, so this way you make a much more informed decision, a much better decision. It's funny you mentioned this. We're sort of talking about buyers and sellers having these reactions, but I get them from other selling agents, listing agents.
Anybody.
And
anybody
so
you come across.
That guiding process, or that professionalism, that discipline really comes to play with everybody. From dealing with listing agents or buyers agents to
mortgage lenders, title companies, insurance companies, anybody you come across, pretty much.
Yeah. So I've learned that just when people go up, just stay calm.
Stay regulated. It's like you don't go high, don't go low. You just understand, be even keel, and then understand kind of what they're going through. And I mean, that's something that took me personally. I didn't have the knowledge. I learned by experience. And so first couple years, I'm like, all right, I took a lot of things personal. Something wouldn't go my way, and they criticized my professionalism. I'm like, man, I could have done better. Made me kind of feel like shit. I'm going above and beyond, doing everything I can. I don't understand why this person doesn't see it. But it's not always about, in a weird way, that's me getting in my ego and thinking about how it's affecting me rather than understanding the situation. So through experience, I learned, okay, sometimes when people kind of go through their things and their emotions, even though I might be the person that they're kind of taking that frustration out on, they're not necessarily pissed off at me. Like if they lost out on a house because I suggested offer more, I'll give an example. They didn't want to come up. They, stayed put out their offer, they lost the house. A lot of times that buyer might get pissed at the agent. Oh, you could have done something better. You're not good at negotiations, blah, blah, blah. Back in the day, I took that personal. Later on, I learned, like, hey, let them just blow off some steam, kind of come back the next day, let them cool down and kind of see where we're at.
And it's funny you mentioned that. I'm glad you did. One thing that I had to learn to do going into a classroom, because I dealt with level 5 students. I dealt with...
So explain that a little bit. I don't know.
So I dealt with a spectrum of individuals who had some challenges. And
Like, are you talking like...
I could deal with... I had students that had Down syndrome. I had students that had learning disabilities. I had students that were in and out of juvenile detention.
And they were all put in a room together?
When I was in DC, they were all put in one room together.
Wow.
And so managing that room was a challenge, to say the least. But one thing I had to always remember every single morning stepping foot into that school was check your ego at the door.
Mm-hmm.
Check your ego. Because the moment that ego takes control,
it's
things
game over.
really take a different turn, and then you regret it afterwards.
And that must have been, extremely challenging. Just kind of, it's challenging to kind of handle teaching a certain demographic of that. But when you have, I think, a certain group with learning disability and then a certain group with behavioral problems who might not really have the learning issues, but they just, aren't disciplined and kind of, are acting up for whatever reason, to kind of have a classroom of that where you're having to you're having to relay a message to everyone in the group and at a pace that works for everyone, because sometimes issues from what I've seen in the past as behavior issues can sometimes be from actually students who are smarter than the rest and get bored, so they tend to act up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you kind of have to appeal to the entire classroom. So you balancing and judging that, I think, would, bring a ton of value to every aspect of your life, learning how to handle that situation.
I think it's helped me a great deal. I mean, you mentioned when you first began, you have years and years of experience, Joe. It's a constant learning process.
Yeah.
And you're gonna experience new. You're gonna meet new people, and you're gonna find yourself in relatively new situations. And I think it's great because you get to apply everything that you've learned in the past, and then you walk away learning something new, which would essentially give you more tools.
Yeah, another tool
in future scenarios.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So Mo, everybody kind of, when they are thinking about real estate, or I don't say everyone, most, so they're kind of going to $1 Million Listing or all these glitz and glamour shows. They're seeing, hey, I'm showing a home, I'm pitching a deal, I'm getting this outrageous check. Everything's so easy, there's no problems. So I always like to kind of flip the script. Obviously, you're teaching, you're kind of having the level 5 classes that you're teaching over there in DC. You have a lot of people in your life saying, hey, Mo, we think you'd be great at real estate, something that you could, take your skill set to and really build a career on and excel at. What's the one main thing that you did not expect when getting into real estate? Like, what was the one thing that was a surprise to you?
I have friends who've been in real estate and have been real estate agents for many, many years. So I would say it's less of surprises and more of sort of what real estate entails and the lack of stability, if you will, the ups and downs. But when you actually go through it, it's tough. You don't know if you're going to have a paycheck the next month. And so you're constantly working leads, you're doing follow-ups, and you just got to be super, super, super proactive so that you can, to some extent, relatively guarantee some income, the months moving forward.
So what I'm hearing is it's almost the uncertainty of a paycheck, and with that uncertainty creates even though you already had a strong work ethic, an even stronger work ethic, because you need to guarantee that you're bringing money in to kind of pay those bills.
Sure, and you mentioned the shows and the stuff that people watch, and I've never really gotten into those shows.
Maybe I just hear about them.
I think it's all noise, and it's extremely misguiding, and people have watched these flipping shows, and they're like, oh, I can do this too, and I can't tell you how many countless people that have gone bankrupt because there's a science behind it almost, and it requires a great deal of experience and I think disciplined investors to be able to essentially get into this real estate game and experience some longevity and be successful at it consistently almost. And the shows that we watch, like Selling Sunset or Selling Tampa, they're showing you the glitz and the glamour.
Yeah, all the good.
But what they're not showing you is the 24/7 hustle to be able to do 1 or 2 closings a month. That's with being an independent agent and an agent on a leads division.
Yeah.
So you got to work every angle to guarantee some relative success.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And there's so much more that goes into it. And I say, it's hard enough to find business and then to execute the business. And everybody, I think, when they're first getting into real estate, they're like, oof, the tough part is done. I always say in real estate, you earn your money from contract to close. Because a lot of people don't realize how much goes wrong there, how many things come up with an inspection, an appraisal, the lender's not making it on time, you have a cloud on title, the house becomes insurable for some reason, or the flood insurance comes back, and it was in a flood zone, but the quote's now through the roof once you get the elevation cert back. And there's just so many different things that can kind of get thrown your way to kind of rock the ship. But then thinking back to your background, that's kind of where I could see you really excelling, is back to that regulation of explaining the process, having that kind of soothing conversation where you're not heightened with emotions to kind of help them understand and kind of bring them down and bring them to the finish line.
Yeah. And you're hitting all these, hitting it right on the nail. You mentioned, people really don't understand all the challenges that you experience from getting under contract until you close. Just the month of March, I had 5 under contract, and I ended up with 1 closing. This month, I had 3 under contract, 1 fell through, and is going back on the market, and I have 2 that should be closing within the next week. So there's so much uncertainty, and you just got to be on the ball like all the time, and don't get relaxed. When I'm under contract now, chill, disappear. Let's neglect this buyer who's under contract and let me start looking for others. You have to create a balance, and you still got to keep them, because things will really just surprise you unexpectedly.
No, 100%. A lot of people too, they take their foot off the gas. They got 5 over, pending. You still have your whole database. Still some people reaching out, but maybe they'll start slacking a little bit. Hey, I got 5. I'm good. I'll get back to them later. I'm gonna. Once again, the ego kicks in. I deserve a day off. I'm gonna go take, blow off some steam, go to the beach or whatever. But you can't count on anything, and everything to back to what you originally brought up of never knowing where your next check is coming from. That always had. I created a mindset, I think, where I just calloused over the years. Of regardless of any level of success that I had, next day I was working again. Because I never knew when it was going to away, never knew when it was going to end. Nothing's guaranteed, right? So every day I just kind of kept that mindset of always having to work hard, have a strong work ethic. Because to your point that you brought up, you had 5 pendings, you had 20% close.
Right.
And that could happen. Now another month you'll have 5 for 5.
It will happen.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen a lot more than you expect it to happen.
Yeah,
so,
depending on the market conditions, absolutely.
You mentioned days off. There is no taking days off. I mean, if you want to take a day off, but work at the same time.
Yeah.
You can be at the beach and work.
I
I'm picking
agree.
up my kids, and I have my laptop.
Yeah.
I gotta pull off the side of the road. I don't like to keep any of my clients waiting. If they have a question, I want to get them an answer as quickly as possible. I can be driving, and I'm going to pull off the side of the road, and I'm going to get them that answer.
Yeah.
It's because that one little extra step that you do may not only get you to get under contract or get them that home they want, but then you have their business for the future, and then everyone else they're going to refer you to.
And I think too, and sometimes I know, once again, I'm going to go back to the ego. Agents think it's unfair. What some might claim, and I get it, unrealistic expectation of the buyers, because I think in this Amazon type environment we're in, where everything's immediate gratification, I need now. You could have been showing them homes, working with them, doing this and that. They come back with one question, and you're not there. And I'm not saying it's fair by any means. They're like, hey, no, I have a question on this house. We think we want to make it offer. Mo's not available. Let's go to Zillow or Realtor.com and find another agent and get that question answered. Now you might have lost them. They go kind of work with another agent.
Absolutely. And there is, I hate to say this, but there is no loyalty in this business. No. And so it is what you are going to offer, bring to the table to them. And if you go into this business understanding that, that's part of taking things personally, then I think you'd have a better chance of success. But if you go in there and you take everything personally, oh, they didn't call me back, I did all of this, I 2-3 months I've been nurturing them, or a few months that I've been showing them homes, gas, time, and at the end they drop off the face of the earth. Don't take it personally. continue to follow up.
Yeah, and there's always people too, kind of, I don't know, it was a weird thing that I did to kind of get in my mind when I was starting off, but I would always look at agents I know working hard. So like, let's say somebody about yourself. I know Mo's going to answer right away. I know he's going to do this. I know he's going to do that. He's going to get back to his clients. He's going to give them sound advice. He's going to provide them with all the data that they need. He's going to have the, all the answers to any questions that they're asking. So every day I'd wake up with almost purpose in my downtime to bring value. It's like, what's one thing that I could do better than most? So if like we came on an equal playing field, every agent I looked at, I'm like, what can I do better than them? So I was always improving on myself because I knew every day was competition. And there's a lot of people. You'll find out the good thing is that there's a lot of people who slack more than that continue to kind of build on themselves. So as you keep doing that for a while and you build momentum, it gets a little easier as long as you kind of keep on that track or pace. But I think it's just the mindset of always sharpening the sword, knowing that there's really no loyalty. Every day I got to go bring value in the marketplace and prove myself.
100%. I think those who reflect have a better tendency to, you know what, hey, you know what, there's a problem. You need to diagnose the problem to treat it. Mm-hmm. And so you recognize that we all have room for growth, understanding that it is extremely competitive, mm-hmm. and don't let that competition discourage you.
Yeah.
Motivate you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So right now, obviously, the market, it's been pretty volatile year over year. A lot of changes. They come quick from, during COVID, very hot market to now interest rates up a little bit. Third, fourth quarter last year, market kind of slowed down a bit. Started picking up momentum now in January. Now we're seeing that we're having inventory problems. So you're seeing multiple offers coming in, things like that. What's something that you're doing right now, Mo, to kind of possibly double down on to ensure that you're going to have success in this real estate market?
Any kind of buyer that comes my way, a buyer who's approved for $100,000, $150,000 to $500,000, you treat them all equally. Mm-hmm. It's good to have relationships with lenders and mm-hmm. understand what programs are being offered. Mm-hmm. Because here in Florida, there's a lot of buyers out there that have no cash mm-hmm. saved up, and many of them make very decent income, mm-hmm. but they don't have any money. I had one that didn't even have money for earnest, mm-hmm. and so I actually was able to negotiate with the listing agent to agree not to take any earnest money, which is super risky, mm-hmm. right? There's no accountability there from the buyer's end. But to answer your question, utilizing all the resources that your lender or lenders can offer, mm-hmm. and explaining these resources. Oftentimes you really need to break things down, and as an agent, you need to understand all these programs mm-hmm. just as good as the lenders do, mm-hmm. because being able to explain things in a way that a buyer can understand makes all the difference.
Plus, too, when you're working with lenders that you traditionally don't work with, and a lot of times I feel, I'm not saying most of them, but there's going to be some who aren't upfront and honest, and you kind of sniff it out. But if you know all these things and know what debt to income ratio is, loan to value, what kind of things can blow a loan up or not, when you ask these questions from the knowledge to a lender who might be BSing you, mm-hmm. you can kind of call their bluff and be like, that doesn't make sense, and here's why, and spit out the guideline type 100%. Of thing. And I think that's vital, especially protecting your sellers on your listings, right. Working with a buyer who has a lender that you've never worked with, and they're trying to get an extension or extend a financing contingency, and you're asking for, okay, why, so I can present it to my sellers, and they're kind of saying something that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Right. 100%. And that's why it's really nice to have a circle of colleagues, and mm-hmm. by colleagues I mean lenders, even inspectors, right? The array of people that you trust and you understand their work ethic and their knowledge base, and it really helps to close the deals.
Absolutely. So what are some tools that you use or resources, Mo, to kind of help you stay on track? So obviously, you're have a strong work ethic, you're very disciplined and kind of militant in your routine. But what are some things you utilize? It could be as simple as a calendar to anything advanced, but just kind of share some of the tools that you use to ensure you can kind of give that level of service that you have been to your clientele.
Good question. I'm actually not super savvy by any means, mm-hmm. But my trusty calendar on my phone. So the moment I have bookings, if I have a buyer who says, hey, let's schedule 6 showings for Saturday, when I when I go on to showing time and I request that time and it's approved, I'm immediately writing down the address on my calendar and then all the notes, whether it's super or the code, so on and so forth. And then I have multiple alarms to remind me of these appointments. So that's one. Using some of the apps that like Follow Up Us is really great because you can go back and reference messages in the event that you forgot maybe a discussion or the details of a discussion. So using CRM, using the calendar, and staying in touch with my clients too is really vital, I think, because you have those aha moments you don't share with them, but you remember when you have these discussions with them. So it's pretty simple for me, like CRM, calendar.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on kind of one thing what you're saying, and I don't know if this is what you're alluding to, but one thing that I put in practice, like let's say I was trying to book a listing appointment, it's Friday, but they're going to be out of town because their son, Johnny, has a baseball appointment. Like I put the notes in the CRM, and then when I call back Monday, let's say, to rebook or to kind of touch base, to kind of get that listing appointment scheduled, before I mention anything real estate related, I'd put notes about why, what was going on, this like that. And the first thing I do is ask about, hey, how was little Johnny's tournament?
100%.
How was his baseball tournament? So I always make that emotional bond, showing that I care about them too. I'm not looking at them because a lot of these people, especially until you build the trust, which is, going to be an equation of time over like value that you kind of bring them and how much you do it over time. A lot of times they're going to be skeptical. Hey, they're just looking at me as a paycheck. That's a lot of time where there's not that loyalty as you alluded to, but you kind of showing that, hey, I do care. It's not just about the check. I want you to get a house. Like I want to see you succeed. And it's those little things. And I don't know if that's what you were kind of talking about using the CRM or if you use it in different ways.
Using the CRM, like a lot of times you'll have your discussions, your texting, your phone calls through the CRM. Yeah. So I can go back and reference that. But you also make a super valid point. That approach essentially is just dealing with people on a human level. And that's what it's all about. And then being genuine about it. If I ask about, I do have a buyer who's under contract and their mother is not feeling so well, and I genuinely wanted to ask, how is your mom doing? Is she getting better? And so that's, I think, the human connection that we're talking about. I know it's competitive. I know everything's on the go, and this business can be dog eat dog. But I think these fundamental values are critical, and I think the right people appreciate it.
Yeah, and I consider it like the human connection, the way that helps me explain, I guess, simplify it, because I think some people do take that for granted. It's very important. You can't fake the funk. You got to learn to care about people, and it's not just like, hey, if I can't help them, I'm on to the next. It's just not going to work, especially in this industry. But I look at it as almost like you're a professional athlete, that's your stretching, right? You might not have time with practice, a biggie regimen, everything, but if you don't stretch, you can tear a muscle, you're done, right? And it's kind of like that. It's that building block. It's like that thing that, people don't like to kind of fit in, don't understand how important it is.
Right.
But when you're not doing it, it could have a catastrophic, series of events on all these other aspects and what you're trying to do.
Sure, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So, and then, you've been doing it a while. You have a great level of success working with clients, buyers, and sellers. What's some guidance, whether it's agent who's maybe been selling real estate for a while, who's struggling, somebody who's newly licensed, not really finding their groove, or maybe it's even somebody on the fence. They've been watching these shows, thinking about getting into real estate. If you give them one word of advice, what would it be?
One word of advice. That's a good question. Don't get discouraged.
Don't get discouraged?
Yeah.
It's a mindset.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people give up.
Yeah.
And a lot of people experience some challenges.
Adversity.
And they feel like, well, others around me know what they're talking about. Or when they do speak to buyers, one buyer who may have some experience will call them out. It happens. You have to recognize that none of us will ever know everything.
No.
And you can be in this business for 30 years. I haven't been in this business for 30 years. And I'm 100% going to be learning things every single year for the rest of my life.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the two things that, I'm going to kind of touch on and go a little bit deeper on is, one, there's always going to be somebody better than you. I know that, right? There's always, regardless of how hard I work, what I do, I know there's somebody always going to be better, which is good for me because then it always has me striving to do better. I'm always chasing greatness because I know there's greater out there, right? And the other thing is, I'm going to go a little bit deeper on, because I think this really resonates well, and no one's really brought this up yet on this podcast. But it's the mindset. A lot of times, an agent will come into a brokerage, and what do? You go look at the top of the chart, right? You say, hey, what are these top guys doing? And after month 2 or 3, I think sometimes people have the naive perspective that they can accomplish this, which some can, but it's very rare.
Right.
And try not to...
Exceptions to the rule.
Yeah. Try not to compare yourselves to the top. Compare yourself to yourself. Are you getting better every day? Are you advancing? Don't worry if you're not as good as so-and-so. Don't worry if don't know as much as so-and-so, because there was one point where they were on your level and they didn't know as much.
Right.
But you gotta, to what you also said.
You don't get to that level. It requires years of experience, at a Rolodex of buyers, and spheres of influence. I mean, it is not something to go in here and think, boom, I'm gonna become a millionaire in 2 years or 3 years. It's just so unrealistic. It'll never happen. Maybe 1 in a billion shot.
Yeah, it's like a lotto, though. It's like winning the lotto almost.
Yeah, and that comes back to the glitz and glamour, right? Of people seeing these shows and they're like, oh, they make it look so easy.
That's the thing. Everything's so easy.
I'm making $30K. It just doesn't work that way.
But yet, only 15% of realtors are still selling real estate after 2 years. 85%. Failure rate. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mo, we greatly appreciate having you on the show. For anybody looking to buy or sell in the Bay Area, whether it's as far south as Sarasota, as far north as Hernando County, Tampa, Hillsborough County, Pinellas, the beaches, Pasco County, Land O'Lakes, Odessa, wherever it might be, we'll post this information to all the social sites as well. But what's the best phone number and email that they can reach you on?
You can reach me at 813-573-0526. I can be reached at mo.sidky, SIDKY, at 54realty.com. I'm almost always available. If you shoot me a text message or leave me a voicemail, I'll certainly get back to you and within a timely fashion.
All right, Mo. Well, once again, we greatly appreciate you having you on this week's show.
Thanks for having me.
And we greatly appreciate you for tuning in to another week of the Real Estate Playbook.